Hello and welcome to ETBFSI.com by the Economic Times. This is FinTech Diary and I have with me G. Padmanabhan, the veteran in the industry and the former Executive Director of RBI. Sir, glad to have you on this show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
To begin with, finally, India has produced a large FinTech event called Global FinTech Festival. You are an integral part of that event. How was your experience of Global FinTech Festival 2025?
Phenomenal. Because this, if you go back 5-6 years in time, when we started and that coincided with the COVID, we thought where we are getting, because the clear direction to us or the clear mandate to us was, since India probably contributes 60% in terms of participation in a Singapore FinTech Fest, can we have a similar kind of event here? And we started off, and at that point of time, everybody had doubts as to how we are going to go ahead. But today, I would think that probably this is one of the events that everyone is looking forward worldwide. I'm not talking about India alone, to participate.
Right.
In fact, I was speaking to some of the speakers in the lounge, and they were saying that clearly, internationally, people have benchmarked this as one of the events to attend.
Absolutely.
So in terms of participation, in terms of people accepting this event, I think we have come a long way. And 2025, I would perhaps think that we have arrived, because last year, over 3 days, we crossed 100,000 footfalls.
Right.
And this year, looking at the registrations and the numbers coming in, I think over the 3 days, we will definitely go past that.
Fantastic, sir. Now, let me shift your focus specifically on the fintech ecosystem of India and would like you to share your learnings and observations. So, 2-3 questions, important one. First is, many fintechs complain that regulations are quite harsh. Compliance is too much while we are still learning to walk. We have not even started running, but RBI wants us to follow so many rules. Of course, RBI had its own sandboxes. RBI gave enough guidelines. In fact, it's known as one of the progressive regulator. But where is the gap and how can we maintain the balance there in your own view?
See, I think we will have to sort of look at it from both perspectives. And the fundamental difference between how a regulator looks at a space,
right,
and how the individuals look at the space or the entities look at the space would be, the individual entities are prima facie concerned about their ecosystem, right?
Yes.
And they are more concerned about the customer convenience, basically. But as a regulator, I think two things Reserve Bank will have to ensure. Reserve Bank will have to ensure that while customer convenience is important, the customer protection is also important. Otherwise, the adoption of technology for every step taken forward can take 2 steps backwards if the customer faces a problem and ultimately the money is lost. I think today the finance minister, while visiting their stalls, asked this question, how can I get my money back once it is lost? Now, these are the kind of issues, whether at the government level or at the regulatory level, they need to be concerned about when they look at any kind of regulations. But having said that, I would probably think that while FinTech will have to think about, or the FinTech entities will have to think about responsibly when it comes to, innovation and putting in place new ideas and new products, I think the regulator, the government, and which they realize, also will have to think through responsibly, because ultimately it's an ecosystem which functions through the funding from external sources, right? So there must be some kind of a certainty as far as the regulation is concerned. So one of the things which I've always been advocating is that whether somebody can think in terms of, let's say, principle-based regulations. And what exactly do I mean by that? I say that clearly when somebody comes into this country or tries to innovate, you must have a clear idea what are the 3 things I have to essentially ensure, and what are the 3 things which I need to avoid from a customer protection angle and from a country's acceptance of a particular product or not. For right or wrong reasons, certain products which are available overseas this country for the reasons best appreciated by the government and the regulator is not prepared to accept that. The ecosystem will have to accept that. So, this is a balancing game. So I would think that we need an ecosystem which have responsible entities, responsible regulators, responsible government, and then we find an adequate balance, and that's the ideal way forward. But having said that, I think if you hear what the finance minister
Yes.
spoke today, what just the deputy governor spoke, I think we are getting there, because
Right.
everybody is realizing what exactly should be their role if India will have to be the benchmark
Yes.
as far as the innovations or the product innovations are concerned. I
Right.
think we are getting there.
No, certainly. In fact, we have large number of unicorns existing in fintechs. Many of them have listed also, so they are heading perhaps responsibly. But if you look at the future growth, sir, what is your observation or maybe estimation? What will make fintechs reach to the next level from where they are today, and how should they, go to that level?
No, to that level, ultimately, if you look at the big companies overseas, and I think that was a point which was made by the BCG while releasing the report. It is not that the top 5 or 7 companies are 7 companies from the origin to today. These 7 companies have underlying 1,000 companies which have been acquired, and they have all sort of, consolidated.
Right.
Now, the question is, you should be looking for this consolidation. That's number one. Secondly, I think you must be ahead of the others in terms of the products. It is not that a suite of product that we adopt across,
Right.
which is adopted, is something which is for our country. I think we should think of world as our market rather than India. And that is again starting to happen. Because, for instance, I read a recent article about the way Zoho has come up,
Yes,
and they're
yes.
talking about, various aspects where they say their main competitor is not somebody in India. They're talking about the international entities as their
Yes,
competitors.
Microsoft, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the way. That's the
Yeah.
right thinking forward.
Right. Another important aspect is, in fact, that conversation happened last year at Global FinTech Festival also, that fintechs are looking at Global South, and in fact, government is also pushing them to look at Global South. How big that opportunity is for the fintechs, sir?
It's a huge opportunity, and it's happening. For instance, I don't know how much it is known in the public domain, but there is a project that is being looked at by many of the Southeast Asian countries called the Product Nexus, which is a part of interoperability.
Yes.
And that is something where India is also taking part. So India becoming, the South, the Global South or the Southeast Asian part of the countries are looking at, the kind of products, infrastructure, or networks, all these kind of things. They're coming together and cooperation to develop this. It's starting to happen. And this is easily the time when India can take the leadership, at least as far as the payments are concerned, because I think in payments we are clearly ahead of the rest of the world.
Right. When we look at the future growth of fintechs, I think capital is one of the important aspects. Investments are important aspects. In the last couple of months, or if I'm not wrong, even years, at least 2 to 3, the funding has been a major issue for a lot of fintechs. Funding winter continued for a long time, though it picked up in August. Do you see that the funding will continue to be a challenge for fintechs, or how do you look at that part of fintech investments?
Now, this is where it relates back to the earlier question you raised.
Yes.
I think for the funding to happen seamlessly, I think we should have certainty about the regulations and the policies. And this is one thing. I think I sit in a legal firm also.
Yes.
So one of the things that the prospective investors look at it is, where is the certainty about certain kind of regulation. So, but at the same time, it must be also understood that in an evolving ecosystem, these changes are bound to happen. But what we need to ensure, in my own view, is the fact that we don't make fundamental changes to the underlying rules of the game. If we make material underlying changes, then the whole system comes to a standstill.
Right.
So that's what we need to be careful about. I think there is enough money floating around. There is enough money even in this country. So funding is not going to be an issue. But I think I feel confident that now the ecosystem has started coming together, whether it's the government, the regulators. Now we have a new player, the IFSC and the GIFT City in the game, which is also adding to the excitement as far as this country is concerned.
Right, sir. My last question to you now, as we have seen a tremendous growth with the innovation from the fintech side, and everyone is quite bullish on fintechs. We are also aiming that they should go to global south, and perhaps fintechs will redefine the whole BFSI space. How do you see the fintech maybe over next 3 to 5 years if you take the vision of future of fintechs in India?
I'm bullish,
Yes.
but at the same time, I also see some kind of consolidation happening because as we grow and become bigger, I think the scale also becomes important to some extent. So
Yes.
while there'll be opportunities for many as far as this country is concerned, given the diversity in terms of small and medium, entities and others. But when we talk about growing bigger, I would also see some kind of consolidation happening. So I think it'll be a combination of both, but I am bullish as far as the fintech is concerned.
One last quick question here, sir. Will banks be worried? Should banks worried about the innovation that the fintechs?
Well, I think ultimately anybody who is inefficient has to be worried about innovation. So if you are suggesting that
Yes.
the banks by nature are inefficient, probably I wouldn't agree completely. But the point is they have certain challenges like
Right.
the legacy systems. And today in technology, what becomes very critical, in fact, I chair the IABX
Yes.
board,
Yes.
where we are now selecting a vendor for our various solutions. So when we were discussing in the technology committee what needs to be the single most important factor that you should be looking at, all of us agreed that it must be agility because the speed
Wow.
with which it's
Yes.
changing. So it's not the great, behemoth which
Yes,
matters.
yes, yes.
Ultimately, you should be able to change quickly.
Absolutely.
So the kind of technology that we put in place today probably would have to address to these changes very quickly. And that is probably where the banks have a small issue in the sense that still their core banking is a legacy system.
Understood. Great, sir. That was meaningful points. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. It was pending for a long time, but thank you so much for your time and sharing those thoughts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching and staying connected with ETBFSI. Thank you.